Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace the radiator on a 2004 Toyota Sequoia. The process is very similar for any first generation Toyota Sequoia or Tundra. This includes the model years from 2001 through 2007. If you're new to the channel, welcome again, and do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below if you'd like to see more of my automotive DIY content. If you're already a subscriber, I want to take this moment to thank you for your support. It really means a lot to me. So let's get right into it. Before we proceed with opening up the cooling system, a very important warning. Never open the radiator cap shown here when the vehicle is hot. The coolant inside the cooling system is at a very high temperature and pressure. If you open up the radiator cap without letting the vehicle cool down, hot coolant may spill out and you may get burnt. To be on the safe side, always let the vehicle cool down for at least 1 to 2 hours before you open up the cooling system. On most Toyota vehicles, a classic sign of the radiator needing to be replaced is the plastic part of the radiator turning yellowish or brown like this. Here is the new radiator we're going to use. As you can see, it is completely black. Open up the radiator cap and keep it safe as we're going to reuse it. Next, we need to go down to the bottom of the vehicle and remove this metal skid plate which covers the radiator. As you can see, there are 5 bolts holding it in. It is a little heavy, so be careful while lowering it so that you don't hurt yourself. This exposes the radiator so we can remove it. On the lower left backside of the radiator, we need to first open the petcock so we can drain all the coolant out of the system. Remove the 2 transmission cooler hoses, and finally remove the lower radiator hose. Before you open up the petcock, make sure to slide a catch can underneath. Slowly open the petcock and let all the coolant drain out. Once the flow slows down to a trickle, close up the petcock and clean the surrounding area. To remove the first transmission cooler hose, first loosen the hose clamp and slide it downwards by using a pair of pliers as shown. Sometimes the hose may be stuck on pretty tight to the fitting on the radiator. The easiest way to loosen the bond is by rotating the hose on the fitting. I'm using a pair of pliers to grip the hose and rotate it on the fitting. It is a good idea to use a cloth between the pliers and the hose so that the sharp jaws of the plier don't damage the hose. Once the hose is loose, you can slide it off with the fitting pretty easily. Keep in mind that a little bit of transmission fluid will leak out. You can plug up the open end of the hose by using a paper towel to reduce the mess. Follow the exact same process to remove the other transmission cooler hose. Next is the lower radiator hose. First, use a pair of pliers to loosen the hose clamp and slide it off of the fitting. Just like for the transmission cooler lines, use a pair of pliers with a cloth draped on them to loosen the hose by rotating it. Slide it off, keeping in mind that a little bit of coolant may leak out. Going back to the top side of the car, we need to remove the upper radiator hose. Follow the exact same process like we did for the lower radiator hose. Don't forget to remove the pipe going from the radiator to the overflow tank. Next up is loosening the fan shroud so we can remove the radiator. It is bolted to the radiator using 4 bolts, 1 on each corner as shown. Finally, we need to remove these 4 10mm bolts which hold the radiator to the chassis. One of the bolts is quite recessed as you can see, so be careful not to drop it when you remove it. Now we can go ahead and remove the radiator from the car. While doing this, you may have to push the fan shroud out of the way. Before we install the new radiator, let's have a quick look at how it's mounted to the chassis. As you can see, on either side of the radiator, there are 2 metal tabs. These 2 tabs hook onto these 2 holes in the chassis over here. Now we can go ahead and install the new radiator. Carefully lower it into place, keeping in mind that you may have to push the fan shroud out of the way. As you can see, you may have to go back down to the bottom of the car so you can push the fan shroud back and the radiator can take its place. Once you do this, all you have to do is maneuver the radiator so its two metal tabs slide into their holes on the chassis. It takes a fair bit of wiggling around as you can see, but you should get there in the end. Now we can install the 4 bolts holding the radiator to the chassis as shown. Next up, we need to reinstall the 4 bolts holding the fan shroud to the radiator. As you can see, I was able to install the first 2 bolts on the right side with no problems. However, when I got to the other side, I noticed that the holes on the radiator and the fan shroud did not line up. Luckily, the 2 holes are not too far from each other. So to solve this problem, I decided to hammer the bolt through the 2 holes and then use a nut on the other side to secure the shroud to the radiator. Reinstall the upper radiator hose by sliding the hose back onto the fitting, followed by its hose clamp. Don't forget to reconnect the tube going from the overflow tank reservoir to the radiator. Going back to the bottom of the car, first install the lower radiator hose, followed by the 2 transmission cooler lines. The new petcock should be closed, but just to make sure, loosen it and then tighten it again. Now that the system is buttoned back up, we can start filling it with coolant. According to the owner's manual, the recommended type of coolant for this car is Toyota Super Long Life Coolant, which is pink in color. It is always best to use the right type of coolant as specified by the manual. Using the wrong type of coolant may cause degradation in cooling performance, which may cause damage to the engine due to overheating. Fill up the radiator until it is full all the way to the brim. This took around 1.5 gallons of coolant. Keep in mind that this measure of 1.5 gallons is for a 50-50 mixture of coolant and distilled water. If you're using a concentrated version of coolant which is 100% coolant, you'll need to mix approximately 0.75 gallons of water with 0.75 gallons of coolant to get the right mix. While you're filling up the system, also have a look at the bottom of the car to see if there are any leaks. The next step is to bleed the cooling system of any air that we may have introduced when we remove the radiator. It is very important to remove air from the cooling system whenever we open it up because air pockets introduced can reduce its efficiency. To make this process easy, we'll be using this piece of equipment which is called a spill-proof funnel. You can find the link for this tool in the video description below. As you can see, the kit comes with a number of different attachments for different types of radiators. First, you select the plastic nozzle that fits into your radiator fill neck, then the metal cap that screws around it, and finally you insert the funnel into the hole. For the Sequoia, the one that fits is the green plastic attachment and this metal cap. With the gasket side facing downwards, insert the green plastic tube into the radiator fill neck as shown, and then tighten the metal cap around it by screwing it on until it is nice and snug. Now you can insert the funnel into the hole and then fill it up with coolant. Before you turn the car on, turn the temperature knob on the center console all the way to the hot side as shown. This will open up the heater core when we bleed the system and remove all the air pockets. While the car is running and you're bleeding the air from the system, make sure to carefully watch the temperature gauge so that the car does not overheat. My temperature gauge does not work currently, so I'll be using a scanner which plugs into the OBD port to monitor the coolant temperature. The final thing to do is to make sure that the car is on an incline so that the radiator fill neck is at the highest point in the system, like this. This makes sure that the air bubbles will flow upwards and out of the system as we want. Now we can go ahead and turn the car on to start the bleeding process. It might take a while, but eventually air will escape from the system in the form of bubbles in the funnel as you can see. As the air is bled from the cooling system, the level of the coolant in the funnel may drop. If this happens, add some coolant to the funnel so that the radiator is always full. Don't forget to keep checking the temperature of the coolant during the process to make sure the car does not overheat. You can also give the upper radiator hose a few squeezes which will help remove some more air from the system. Don't forget to check under the car for any coolant leaks after the engine has been turned on and is running. Eventually the car will reach operating temperature which is around 190 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point, if you look in the funnel and can't see any bubbles, bleeding is complete. To remove the funnel and the extra coolant inside without making a mess, first insert the stopper as shown. Remove the funnel, followed by the 2 spill-proof attachments, and finally reinstall the radiator cap. Open up the cap for the overflow coolant reservoir and fill it up so that the level is at the full mark as shown. Next, we'll go on a quick drive to monitor the performance of the cooling system under engine load. During the drive, watch the temperature gauge to make sure the car does not overheat. Listen to the center console area as you drive. If you can hear a sound which resembles gurgling or bubbles rushing through water, and the sound increases in intensity as you accelerate, there is still air remaining in the cooling system which needs to be bled out. As you can see, I can't hear anything at all, which means that our bleeding process was successful. Keep in mind that as you drive, more air may be bled from the cooling system through the overflow reservoir. This will lead to a drop of coolant level in the overflow reservoir, so make sure to top it up accordingly. Eventually, as all the air is bled out from the system, the level will stabilize. To complete the replacement, we can reinstall the metal skid plate under the radiator. Again, the plate is quite heavy, so be careful not to drop it on yourself. This completes the replacement of the radiator. So that brings us to the end of today's video. If you liked it and would like to watch more of my DIY automotive content, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.